right, morning everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning to attend our Founders Stories. I'm Ryan Elon. I head up investments at Route One Ventures, and I got the real pleasure this morning to spend some time with you all and with Tobin Juday. Tobin will talk about himself in a moment, but one of the co-founders of Updox, which Route One holds up as one of the great startup success stories that we've had the privilege of being involved with. So I think you'll really enjoy the conversation with Tobin. And to get started, Tobin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, Tobin Juday, nice to see you all here. Don't promise it's going to be worth your time, but hopefully it'll be fun. Yeah, I live here, Upper Arlington with my wife and 4 kids. Started up not too long ago, been a developer, so I don't know how much to get into right now, but yeah, it's good.
Well, I think it's the founder's story, right? So there's always a chapter before the founding. So kind of what led you to that moment that you and your co-founders got together and started Updox? What was the early part of kind of your education and career journey that brought you to that Updox founding moment?
Yeah, so I went to school for software engineering at Ohio State here. Graduated in 2002. Started with CheckFree up in Dublin. And I worked there for a while, and then my manager ended up leaving for a small company here in town, kind of both like in a transportation logistics space, kind of in a, they weren't a startup, but they were operating a startup mode. They just gotten some money for the project. So he hired a bunch of us to go over there called Best Transport, still around today, and was there about a year, and then got a call on Friday night. He's like, hey, bring in your laptop Monday morning, it's all over. So they kind of cut the funding, the project was dead. So that kind of fell apart very quickly and unexpectedly. And but we built kind of a tight team. A lot of us from CheckFree, some new guys, really were working together. We tried to figure out if there's something else we could kind of move to. Nothing was really landing, and people had to start finding other jobs. So one by one, people were peeling off. I ended up at Skybus, the kind of airline startup here in Columbus, which was very fun. It was a great job for 3 months until I got a call on Friday night saying, "Hey, come in Monday, bring your laptop, it's all over." Again, very unexpected. And at that point, we had been talking, some of us from the Best Transport company, about like, hey, there's this Updox opportunity. Do we want to do it? Do we not want to do it? And I sort of made up my mind, I don't want to do it. I love Skybus. It's so fun. It's a cool company. It's nice to like be working on software development for a company that like has something in the physical world. And I was like, no, I'm not doing Updox. And then kind of before we had the meeting to show up and say you're in or out, I got that call. I was like, okay, I guess I am going to do Updox. I think going through those couple layoffs kind of made me realize like, I'm not worried about getting a job. There's a market out here. I'm marketable. I could go find a programming job somewhere. I really want to avoid the Friday night calls. And I thought, like, hey, if I start with a company, I will see it coming. It may not work out, but I'll know it's coming. It's not going to be a Friday night call. And so that's kind of the weird story that kind of pushed me to, yeah.
Which part of some interesting companies that kind of has some success, has some notoriety, and then kind of the cold shower of how fast things can turn, in the startup world.
Yeah, I think I had seen, even at CheckFree, and then at Explorer too, I had seen times where, it was maybe like a handshake on a golf course, and we bought this huge package that was a bad idea, or some investors in West Virginia got cold feet and pulled out their money, or all these different things where I felt like kind of the path and the career and the software product we're building was out of like my hands. And I kind of wanted to have more input into like, well, what are we doing, and or making the best decisions, and kind of wanted to be part of that, and that sort of was another attractive thing about sort of starting the company and being able to make those decisions. And, I remember very clearly thinking like, we may build the wrong thing. We may build the right thing very poorly. Like it could fail for any number of reasons, but I wanted to fail because it's my fault and not because it was someone else's fault.
Well, Updox business today quite a bit different than what you and your co-founders initially built back in 2009 or so. So talk a little about Updox then and now. How did Updox get started? What was like the first product, the first problem solution that you guys were tackling? And then talk a little bit about kind of the product, market, and company evolution over the tenure you've had with the company, which continues.
Yeah, sure. So we had actually purchased some IP of an Updox company before us. There was a doctor in Maryland, Andy Barbash, who had sort of built this kind of desktop software that did some handful of functions kind of the health space for smaller doctor practices, doctor offices. And we had been contacting him and sort of like ended up purchasing some of the IP and the ideas for him. And then we kind of went through a phase of, well, what is it going to be? And we went through a lot of iteration about like, well, it could be some sort of scheduling thing, help schedule appointments, it could be like a workflow where there's like graphs and diagrams about like a fax comes in here, or a call comes in here and does all these things. In the end, we just decided we should just replicate what this other thing does because it has customers and people like it. And it's something that we know is being used. And so that was a combination of basically electronic faxing, email, voicemails, incoming voicemails, kind of land in like a single inbox. And then the big feature was this original dev had hacked into an electronic health record system, and so had built his own integration into their Access database, which they didn't love. But so it had this integration, so this application this early Updox had a list of all the patients, so it kind of knew the patients, and then could, most importantly, import these facts that are coming in directly into the chart. So it was a huge time saver. Faxing is still wildly popular in healthcare. You would not believe, I mean, we fax tens of millions of pages every month. And we're, kind of still quantifying in the whole scheme of things. So it's wild how much faxing there is. And so that's where we got started, just basically electronic faxing. We did go back to that health record system and ink like a proper deal so they gave us access and we're hacking in. From there, we just kind of started building out. So once we had that integration and faxing, like next, let's go look at other EHR systems, electronic health record systems, sorry. Let's go, we're doing this one for basic chart. Let's go find other smaller EHRs in the space that might let us integrate. And then we do faxing. What other communication kind of pieces can we do? So there we have email, patient portals, reminders, broadcasts. Basically, kind of the niche we started to focus on pretty early on is like communication. So we stayed away from all the clinical stuff. Early on, we never had any sort of healthcare or clinicians on staff. So it was never clinical. It was always just more like practice efficiency, practice communications, whether it's like patients to doctor, doctor to doctor, inter-office staff, like between employees. So that's kind of the niche that we landed on pretty early on and kind of served us well throughout their career. And even today, sort of the logo, the slogan, whatever, is like simplifying the business of healthcare. So staying out of healthcare itself, but working on the business and efficiency and sort of that side of the equation.
Well, there's so many kind of interesting dynamics there that you hit on. Integration with the electronic health record software companies being a key part. And then one thing that I always thought was cool, when Mike Morgan, who joined you and your co-founders somewhat early on in the journey, he said, you've arrived when your company name becomes a verb. You Google stuff, and Mike said, it's great when you hear practice groups, doctors, or administrators say they Updox a record to you. So talk a little about that network effects part of the business where you guys really use that integration with EHR systems to really penetrate the market. It really becomes a standard of communication of medical information in a secure, HIPAA compliant way from kind of one provider to another. So how important was that? How did you go about building that network effect?
Yeah, I think it was, early on, there were 3 founders, or 3 working founders, I should say, there were a couple more guys in the wings there. But the two developers, and then Mark Sherry was kind of like our business CEO guy, biz dev guy. And we didn't have any sales, any marketing, anyone to do that or focus on it, and didn't even do it. It was all just word of mouth for quite a while. So I ended up answering a lot of phones and would, do a little sales pitch or training or whatever, but for a long time it just spread word of mouth. We had a handful of customers from the original Updox platform, and they were mostly small, very small practices, but they had friends, and they were in medical associations or groups. We just kind of spread naturally through that for free, essentially, which is great. And I think we also got a lot of sales from the integration with the EHR themselves. So if the doctor would buy, we'll just use Amazing Chart, that first health worker we integrated with, and they would ask about faxing, or ask about integration like that. I mean, we were it. We were the solution. So we got a lot of referrals from the EHRs. And so there's a lot of providers using Amazing Chart, so that's kind of a source we could do. But we also realized every new health record we add adds kind of a huge number of new potential customers to kind of our addressable market. And so that pretty quickly, Mark Sherry ended up like hitting the road and trying to find other smaller EHR systems. And what we found a lot too is these smaller systems, they were starved for resources at times as well, so they weren't building what we were building. And these small practices, they're struggling to get by in a lot of ways. They're not making a lot of money, so they're also pretty underserved in the market. So you've got Epics and Cerners, and the theme is out there. We're huge in the space, have billions of dollars, and are building whatever hospitals or large health systems want, but the smaller practices were pretty underserved from a technology standpoint. So I think we helped fill a nice niche there as well, or a need, I should say. And I think that worked out well for us. Just we had a cool solution, and if you get someone in a demo and say, hey, if your fax comes in, you can have it in your chart, and your provider, your doctor notified that this is there waiting for them in 20 to 30 seconds. It's huge time saving over having some of these practices would have 1 or 2 full-time employees just scanning paper into their health record systems. And so that's just faxing alone. And then we start to do reminders and other communication in the patient portal, and it really added up.
So stepping back, right, this is such an elegant story, I think, from an investor perspective in terms of you've got these incumbent electronic health record companies. They have kind of functionality that they do, but they've got this seemingly now obvious gap on practice communication management, which is kind of, I think, how you guys ultimately kind of frame yourself in terms of where you fit into the market. They don't have the resources to build. You can fit in. You kind of elbowed your way in with your first kind of de facto integration, and then you figured out you could do this for a number of EHR software providers that already have installed customer bases that, oh, by the way, could probably stand to realize a really nice ROI from bringing the efficiencies of Updox into their practice. So you guys formalized that in Updox's growth.
Sure. I think I'll put a lot of the success of the company on the folks who were building those relationships in the first place. And that was not me. I was building the product itself, doing training and support. So I think we certainly were very diligent in kind of tracking down these small providers, small healthcare providers and EHRs. And I think we would do whatever it took. So, we would approach each one and figure out, like, what do they have, what are their options? Is it direct database access? Is it like for transferring flat files? Is it, there's an API we can use? So we were very like, we'll do whatever we can to integrate with you. And there were very shared agreements and all that. Honestly, I cannot speak a lot to sort of the effort it took to get some of those folks, in, just given, I think I was focused on like more operational coding, and then support and training. I know there's a large practice fusion, there's it's a large free, it was free, now not free, a huge player in the market, and one of our biz dev guys chased them for I think 5 years before they finally kind of agreed, and then we had amazing influx of customers when they landed. So certainly, like the folks, Mark Sherry, Mike Morgan, Sean Ramsey, through the years, those guys were absolutely like instrumental and key in making this thing work. That's not my skill set. I think I am not out there networking, hate networking, or like making those connections, reaching out, going through this negotiations or contracting like that. That's definitely not my bag. I was happy to sort of hand that off to some of the other guys who were much better at it.
Well, you kind of hit on just the good fortune that you and your co-founders had in terms of something that we love to see with founding teams, and that's sort of complementary skills, good kind of alignment on mission. But talk about kind of the founding team a little bit more, Tobin. Kind of hit on your role, but kind of your role, some of the other founders, and then some of the early employees that were real key, like Morgan coming on board. I think it's really a powerful story about just how complementary you guys were and the way you balanced the workload in building the company in a way that kind of played to everybody's strength, so really substantial benefit.
Yeah, I think we certainly had, so early on there were 3 of us, Mark Sherry, Mike Whitting, and then myself, 2 devs, and basically a CEO, biz dev guy. It worked out pretty well. I think we shared the responsibility for development, and then Mark was working on contracts and business negotiations and things like that. And I think early on and then throughout sort of my career, and this is one of the things that I wanted to kind of have a chance to say today, but I never wanted to be like a CEO. Like, I don't want to run a company. I want to get stuff done and kind of stay under the covers. And I, over the years, had like multiple chances to sort of like be in management, and like I would manage a team for a little while. And then as soon as I could, I gave it up. And I mean, heard several times where I had to run the QA team for a while, and then we brought in Rich Newport, and then I had to run the dev team for a while, and we brought in Mike Harris. Every time we brought in a real manager to replace me, I was immediately embarrassed by how much better they were doing than I was. And so I think there's this like idea out there of like the startup founder, and they're this type A personality, and they're networking, and they're like hitting LinkedIn, and they're just out there, and they want to run a company and got the strategic vision, and that's fine for those people. But I think there's room for other people too. And I think it was great to, I guess my advice would be, if you're not that person, find one of those people. I mean, it kind of landed in my lap. But it was great to be able to kind of partner with the team, Mark Sherry, and then Mike Morgan especially. This whole thing is going to be an ad for Mike Morgan. He was great. But we as a team really, there were not egos involved. I think everyone kind of was able to focus on what they wanted to do or what they excelled at, what they specialized in. kind of, we were able to like make it work. So, yeah.
So you had this complementary founding team, good kind of alignment of like values and culture, but then you talked about kind of scaling the team and building these functional areas that you were running in the early days, and now you're bringing in experts that can build and manage those operations. But so you're looking for the skill set that you want, but you're also looking for that cultural fit, because you guys had something real special on the cultural side at Updox. So how did you balance that? How did you think about those key early hires that were going to lead parts of the organization?
Yeah, I think we got really lucky with some hires. I don't know if it was skill or luck. I think Mike Morgan was basically sort of, Lydia and I, the developer, didn't know him, but Mark Sherry kind of thought he might be a good fit, brought him in, we kind of met, got along pretty well. And it was pretty much, that was Mark's call. So that was a great hire. But then as we brought in like our support people, some of our first developers or supporter training, again, we didn't know how to hire somebody or interview someone. So I think our interview process was probably unusual. And I think we tried to get a feel for technical capabilities and capacity and just their skill set. But also, I think somehow through the process, we sort of figured out how to like find people that we would work well with too, and had sort of like a similar work ethic or drive or culture. And so I think some of those key hires were great. Our first dev hire was this amazing kid who worked at a public school in Canton, and he had just built a little Android app. And that was it, but we had like this good feeling about it. And he was amazing, did very well for himself. And that he was a great hire, really fit with the team and built a lot of the culture. We brought in one of our first sales ladies, Kate Lashy. She was also great. She knew Mike Morgan from kind of a previous job. I think some of these early hires, maybe even accidentally, I don't know, but they really like picked up what we were like trying to do. And then as they started building out their teams, I think we just built something really special. Meg Barr, one of our first support people here, was amazing and really helped build that team as well. So I think like I think we made some really good hires early on. And then those folks just built teams. And again, Mike Morgan was a great sort of, he got the vision and got the culture and built it more than probably we even could have ourselves. So I think we really relied on the team in general to kind of continue kind of what we were trying to get out there. And I think we got it right.
Well, yeah, I think just as you go through kind of these different pieces of the Updox story, I think I want to step back and make sure everyone understands just this was a pretty lengthy story. So was it 2008, 2009, company founded, the ultimate transaction with EverCommerce 2020, end of the year. So that's 11, 12-year journey. That's a pretty long road. So as you kind of reflect on that, and for founders earlier in their journey, you're going to have these kind of moments of truth, right? Where is this business going to make it? Are we on the right track? When we were chatting earlier, you had kind of an interesting reaction when I was saying, hey, I'd like to ask you about this. So talk a little about kind of when you were kind of most concerned with your co-founders and kind of maybe some of the factors that maybe were the context for that.
Yeah, it was a long time. So we kind of signed the paperwork in 2008, and there was no Rev 1 back then. It was Tech Columbus, or a previous incarnation. And we went through the Tech Columbus, some kind of startup incubator program. At the end of the year, they decided to fund us. So basically, January 2009, I started working for Updox officially and getting paid, which is great. And then I've been doing that since then. So I think the question about like, was there ever a make or break moment or a real like crisis of faith? I don't know. Morgan may have kept those from us. But there was never really something during most of the company lifetime work where that was a big concern about not making it. I think early on with that Tech Columbus grant almost, the money kind of came in three waves. So there's some upfront, and then we had to hit some certain customer numbers to get the other two chunks. And we did not hit one of the chunks before our money ran out. And so I think that was the closest we got. My wife was interested in how things were going at that point. But we sort of, I think that lasted a couple months, but we sort of got through it, hit that next chunk, got the next income, and sort of put it back in the business and kept moving, started getting paid again, which everybody appreciated. And so I think that was, again, that was so early on. It was just the three of us. It didn't feel like we had a real company at that point. So I don't think it was quite the same Chris faith that you were kind of getting after. And then after that, it was, slow growth. I think we purposefully, tried to build kind of a bootstrap, sustainable business. So I think there was never a focus on, let's go, where does the money make this happen? It was how do we kind of start this slowly, responsibly, sustainably. I'm very, again, grateful for Mike Morgan sort of running it very conservatively, never putting us in danger. But I think a lot of that goes back to him and the team at the time that he had around him, are just making decisions that wouldn't put us in those serious situations. And then because we weren't chasing big VC rounds or had big VC partners who were making certain demands or things, there was never a risk of getting pulled out from under us or having some sort of influx of the old people are out, the new people are in. So I think I'm very grateful that we were able to sort of find a way to fund it. It started, slow. It certainly was slow, right? 10 years, 11 years, and it felt it at times. But I think that was one of the things that we were interested in doing. I think worked out well. Thanks to sort of almost hard work during the whole time.
Well, I think my reflections, so I first had a chance to meet Tobin and the team in 2012, so pretty early in the journey, but one thing that you immediately kind of got a sense of was how well run the company was. And just in terms of some of the things you're mentioning around decision-making, investment in the business, when you decided to make hires and try to step on the gas a little more. And I think, you're being, modest in terms of the characterization of the growth, and maybe it wasn't hundreds and hundreds of percent year-over-year growth, but I think Updox really showed for me on the journey the power of compounded growth and steady growth over the years, because by the time Updox was looking at, strategic options, is this a time to, sell the business, you built a really impressive base of customers, really impressive base of recurring revenue, very high retention of your customers, and it's one that we hold up because of the way you guys used the capital that you raised in such a disciplined manner. It seems that that was just really instrumental to the company's success. So kind of any reflections on that piece?
No, you're doing great. Keep going. No, I think, it was the I think the kind of company where we wanted to keep control of it, keep it within the company, not let it get out of our hands, and I think I think the other management, I think we felt a lot of responsibility to our employees. Everyone had some stake in the business, and it was really a close-knit group of people. I just like the corporate family terms. We were not a family, businesses are not families, but I think it was very close to a lot of people today. And I think felt a lot of responsibility around I don't want to have to let any people go. I want this thing to work out, not for me, but for all of them. And so I think it took time and patience to let it grow to the point where there was interest externally, but it wasn't necessarily what we were imagining at the beginning, but I think we found it the right path for us and for our folks.
I think that's just such an awesome founder mentality. Thinking about the stakeholders, thinking about how you're a great steward of those different stakeholder groups, and how that informs the decisions you guys make each and every day. I want to wrap up with just a few more questions, Tobin. Part of that Updox journey was the pandemic, and not just like the pandemic affected all businesses, that had profound implications for your customers and the value that Updox was delivering during that time period. So can you talk a little about how Updox technology, practice communication, the telemedicine enablement, how that really intersected with what occurred, during the pandemic and the impact that had on the company?
Yeah, and I think this goes. It was not a unique experience for us. It's very unique that I think. Again, I keep mentioning folks because it was a real team effort. But Mike Whitting is the other founder, developer, is a consummate tinkerer. He was always building stuff that we did not ask for. But he built a whole patient portal kind of on his own before there was really much need or interest in one. Did some encrypted messaging, and that ended up being like a government mandated kind of healthcare regulation that really put us in a good spot. And so he was kind of like, had this habit of building these technologies that 6 or 9 months later would be very key and would be huge for the company. So I think video chat was another example of that sort of practice and discipline. So he had kind of been playing around with the video chat thing. Found it was kind of cool. Like Morgan asked me to sort of like flesh out a little more prototypes, so we did. And it was kind of cool, and it worked, which was amazing. And we sort of like released our version 1 in like fall of 2019, and no one wanted it. There was no interest in it, and so like it wasn't really doing anything there. And then March 2020 happened, and there's a lot of interest in it, very suddenly. And it was wild to go through. Looking at the other Updoxers in the room here. I mean, within 3 days, like, we're all home, and we're like, oh no, our kids are out of school for 3 weeks. That's crazy. And it just kept going. And I think the app that we built really blew up. Not only with our customer base, all our existing customers like wanted it. We kind of got it out there, but there were tons of interest from other EHRs, other partners. And so it was an absolutely wild time. I was building new registration pages as fast as I could just to get new parties in with like their kind of logo or information. The team was, like, support team was doing sales and marketing, and we're doing like trainings like you wouldn't believe. It was wild. The whole company came together at the same time. We were like all like, just pushing hard. And I'm actually very thankful just for the busyness, because I think it took a lot of the edge off the pandemic. I think there's a lot of like angst, obviously, about that. And I think we felt like we were helping, like we could come fight back. And we were, in very real ways, saving people's lives, keeping like small offices in practice. In practice, I was not on like phone calls with customers at that point, but I remember hearing from more than one support or salespeople, like doctors were in tears, like thanking us for like, keeping their practice like in working, and so it was very rewarding. It's like emotionally to be able to sort of have something that I think it like kind of gave us hope and kind of reason during that like wild time. So. Yeah, I think from a technology perspective, it was great. We were able to fill a niche and then kind of got a lot of new partners at that point, and we then tried like, hey, you're here for a video chat, we have faxing, we have reminders, but I think, not to be too commercial about it, but like, it was a great, then stepping stone to sort of like start selling more other products into those as well. So, I mean, it was transformative for the company. I still wish it wouldn't have happened, obviously, but I think it worked out well, and it was an absolutely wild time to go through. But I think it was sort of just a little bit of right place at the right time, but also a little bit of like, hey, like where do we think the future is going? Even if it's not here yet, there's no interest here, kind of getting ahead of the market, building some of those things. I think if we had not had that solution in time, COVID hit, I don't think we could have built something that would have worked and had nearly as well and had it out to the market and made nearly as much impact. So I think it was really due to kind of like that discipline and that practice of like continuing to build and iterate and test new things before they're really required or being asked, that I think paid off big time for us. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, that was just, I think, almost just sort of the last, great endeavor, that Updox took on and played that powerful role, kind of enabling thousands, tens of thousands, I think, of telemedicine visits through his platform. So what a great part of the journey. So the real interesting topic, I think, for me, as we were talking and preparing, was, you remain at Updox today. So kind of reflecting on the time starting out as a technical co-founder, through the growth, through the development of the team, and now, today being part of a bigger team, and kind of how you've been pulled into different things and how your roles evolved. What's changed? What stayed the same? Any other final kind of reflections just sort of on your journey with Updox?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still at Updox. Again, kind of sold in December 2020. Now it's 2024. I'm stuck here. I would not have expected that. I think there's some days I feel dumb for like, what am I still doing here? Like, why am I not going and trying something else? But I still have like a lot that I think I can do. I'm still interested in sort of serving that same customer base. We have customers from that first year who I still am on a first name basis with and interact with. Still, they're still in the same position. They're still providing healthcare in these small rural areas, and they're still, as cash strapped as they ever been, right? We're still providing valuable services to these folks. So I think I still have kind of a heart for them. There's a lot we can still do. Guys, I love faxing. It's wild, but there's so much like we can still do to make faxing better for our customers in the platform. I look at we can do this and this and this. So I think I'm still excited about. I'm the only one, by the way, but I'm still excited about kind of what we can do with the product. So I think there's one of my favorite things to do at a company is just like iterate on something and live with it, and just like learn it and be like thinking about it all the time, understand how our customers think about it and use it and the ways to push it forward. So I think I still have the opportunity here, and so I've been working on that. I think again, I've certainly had conversations and opportunities to like move up the chain and be like more into management or more strategic product, and I think I sort of continue to say no thank you. I really enjoy sort of being in the weeds and figuring like, hey, like what is this product going to do? How is it going to work? What are the functions? What do we need to do now? What can we do later? Like let's dream big about how we can sort of tie these two things together to be more productive, more efficiency, more integration. So I think it's, again, there's room for all types. I think I still have no interest in running a company or sort of running a product department. That's a lot of responsibility. And I think you don't need to sort of have that desire to necessarily be a key part of kind of the startup experience.
Awesome. Well, Tobin, you covered a lot on the waterfront there. Any other final lessons to share with the audience from what was a pretty remarkable journey that you've been on with Updox and continued on?
No. You should try really hard to be in the right place at the right time and know the right people, I guess. I mean, I'm incredibly privileged. It just landed in my lap, to be honest. And I think it was, again, surrounded by a huge number of amazing people. Many of them have been mentioned here, so I think none of this would have happened without any number of them. So I think, yeah, I don't know, I feel extremely lucky to be here. I don't feel like it's necessarily something I did. Yeah, I think, just keep your eyes open, take opportunities where you see them. It was a risk, we were a little nervous early on. So it was certainly a risk to kind of jump in with the team and then going through that early period, like not seeing any money come in for a little while. I think that was also a little test, but it worked out, and I think I don't know how to do that. How to give that advice, how to turn that into advice.
Well, I'm glad you took the endeavor with your co-founders. We were fortunate to be an investor in Updox. It was an excellent outcome, and we were thrilled to just be a small part of the journey with you and your co-founders. So with that, turn it over to the audience. Any questions for Tobin?
Hi, thanks. Great talk. Really appreciate it. So just first to try to put what he said into advice, chance favors prepared mind, right? So you mentioned early on that your team decided we're not going to focus on clinical. So I'm curious if you could expand more on that, because that's an area where it sounds there's a need and your value proposition would play really well, but just deciding early on we're not saying no to something like a whole market like that. That I can understand why, but I'd like to hear your perspective on why that.
Yeah, I think from one very practical standpoint, we didn't have anyone who knew clinical. I think Wing and I both came from, transportation, logistics firms, and then check-free, like electronic bill payment and customer care. So I think a lot of our past has been focused on this business-to-business type software, efficiency, productivity, things like that. And that's really where we felt like our niche was. I spent a lot of time on the phone with customers, either on sales calls or training calls or support calls, hours and hours and hours, and got a feel for their practices and how they ran and their problems, and to look at or hear their stories or watch their go-to meetings and sort of see what they had to do and then figure out alternatives. So I think it was like, hey, I can make this process easier for you, from my productivity, from my workflow, from a communication standpoint. They weren't bringing any clinical challenges to me, and I had nothing to offer them in that regard, and neither did kind of the other two of us. And in fact, we had no one with clinical experience until much later in our lifetime. So I think mostly just kind of pragmatic. We just didn't have that skill set, and I think there was we didn't feel like we had to have it early on because there was so much low-hanging fruit. There's so many things we could do to help these folks out, that we never felt a need to go there.
Yeah, this is a cross-generational question, particularly because of the fact that you're still in the business, and Ryan, because of the teams that are being developed and incubated out of here. I heard an interesting comment about, you mentioned cultural fit, and because of this culture, we have 5 generations working together now at the same time. And instead of cultural fit, it's cultural transformation was the term that they had used. I thought that was interesting. One of the things I think that is also interesting, maybe you can share by being in the organization how this is helpful, and that is reverse mentorship. So you have, because you've been there, you can be a mentor to all the younger people that are coming in. But in order to do business well today, you need to be able to do business with the younger generations becoming the buyers of goods and services. Are you integrating a reverse mentorship where the young people help you out?
Interesting. If I'm not, does that sound bad? I think, like, explicitly, I don't think we're really, like, that's not like an explicit program or anything that we're doing. But I think, in general, like, you know, we've hired a lot of younger people recently. And I think one of the things that we've done well at over the years is we've tried to, and this is also a cost-saving measure, but we've tried to hire young folks who are early on in their career, but like we feel like they've got promise. They've got drive, they've got promise, they've got commitment. I think, you know, constantly bring those people in, those folks, I think it brought a lot of energy and new ideas in. And I think then we could mentor them in terms of just like business, how business works, and like it's not just all about this or all about this. There's compromise and things like that. And we've had a lot of conversations over the years about like everything is not an engineering problem, right? There's engineering stuff, but like there are also business problems you have to solve. You can't always just take the most elegant engineering solution. But I think we've also hired young people who are better at everything than I am. I'm looking at a bunch of them right now. And so I think there's a realization like, there are people who are smarter and better at all this stuff than I am in all of the other categories. And so it's been great to sort of find that talent and kind of bring them in and let them sort of grow, and then it's always fun to see them leave and like kind of move their career out to the next level. So it has been kind of like a little incubator of talent. Right? I think that we've sent out a lot of really smart people into the world. And I'm very proud of that and proud of everything those folks are really doing.
Thanks for your time this morning. I also started at Jeffrey. That was an awesome time to be around. I work in product now. I think you hit it upon early. You almost were more of a sales-driven product org because you're making decisions and product decisions just to make sure that you're bringing in revenue, right? At some point, you transition as you get large enough, and you can be a little more disciplined on not making all those customization decisions to your platform, to your product, based on what's best for your product. Can you describe that journey or where you are in that now?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a constant battle, I think. There's always like something new and shiny, and some biz dev person telling you this one deal is going to change every day. So I think it was for a long time. I think early on you do have to be in that like we'll do whatever it takes. Like, you know, how do we get the next deal, the next customer? You know, those early customers. A lot of their ideas became features, right? Because they were already input, right? We had to like make sure they were happy and stay happy. So certainly over time, I think that was especially a challenge for me because I wanted to keep sort of like that customer focus, like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to go build that. And I think that was the discipline we had to build. Like you can't always do that. You know, that might work, or that might be great for these 5 or 3 or 7 practices, but there's another 1,000 that won't really use that, but they do need something else. So I think over time, and we got better and we got worse at it. So I think there's checkered history of sort of like building what we should have built versus what might be new and shiny or the promise of something that didn't really pan out. So there's certainly like, you know, corpses along the way of things that we probably shouldn't have built. But I think we've been learning that over time, and then I think now at EverCommerce, we're really trying to get much more like a product, you know, that growth idea. Probably a little bit late to the game, but I think that the concepts there have been present for a while. Have maybe put quite such a finger on the exact sort of terminology and structure. But it has been a challenge, and I think it takes some discipline to get through, because as a product guy who's very focused on the end customer and very attuned to like every little idea and ticket that comes in, that's a great idea. I can see that. I love that idea. I want to build it. You know, and then our big product roadmap will never make any progress because we're all doing these one-off things. So, yeah, it is an ongoing struggle. I also want to keep building those little things, because I think if you take 6 months and, okay, we're going to release our new Sprocket, and it's a 6-month project, and we just work on that for 6 months, the product is like stale for 6 months, and there's nothing happening in the meantime. I think customers feel that. I think that's the other route that we kind of overcompensated to, is we're just doing the big things, and we're not paying enough attention to sort of the product, and then it kind of languishes, or folks don't feel like they're getting any value or any additional value, or it's not changing. And so I think there's a balance there, trying to figure out how do we continue to iterate on the old products while still kind of building the new products, next gen stuff. Again, like the patient portal, or the secure messaging, or the video chat, that worked out well. So it's kind of a balance, and trying to figure out how to manage those two things.
We probably have time for another question or two, if there's any more. No? All right. All right, well, let's give a round of applause for Thank you all for joining us today. Refill your coffee on your way out, and our next founder story will be in June, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Okay.